Hey folks, this is Matt Rainwater here, and today I wanted to do some inking. So I'm going to be inking this panel here, this crazy, you decide. um, this is in Trailer Park Warlock episode 38, and I'm doing pretty good on, I don't know, my progress in it is going not too bad. I had a very enjoyable process, like writing and thumbnailing this episode, and drawing it has been pretty good too. It's been a pretty fun episode to draw. There's a lot of monsters and uh, action and drama and all that good stuff. All that stuff we love. Um, the last couple of episodes that I've been working on that are all like back Jake. It's all backstory for Jake, and so there hasn't been as much comedic stuff in it. I mean, in this arc in general, the comedy is sort of toned down to make way for, I guess, the gravity of the situation, so to speak. Um, so I mean, let's see. I'm just thinking when this video airs, we will be at probably episode 32 on Webtoon. So you'll be getting into sort of the madcap sort of things that are happening to Jake as he is a bobcat right now. Why am I saying all this? I'm saying all this for a reason. I'm trying to remember what it was. Basically, all I'm saying is for a little bit, it gets a little bit heavy, and I'm making sure that I have moments to lighten that heaviness up. Because, ultimately, the reason why I'm making this story is to make something that is, like, kind of silly and absurd. But I also, want to hit some of those dramatic beats too, because Jake's story does have some heaviness to it. Like, there's a reason why he's such a, down and out so and so. And that's the whole point of this entire season of Trailer Park Warlock. This entire story arc is to cover like what happened to Jake? What's going on for him? Why does he have this curse on him that if he loses his collar, he's going to turn into what you would assume is a vampire initially, but is actually a bobcat? Because that's what it looks like, I guess, when a human turns into a bobcat. That was my whole. That was the whole thing I was trying to do, and for me, I liked that I was kind of tricking the audience, getting y'all to think one thing was happening, and then something else entirely happens. And I will also say, for those who have been reading and who may be annoyed with how it's happened or confused or like, how did. Wait, but Jake said he was going to be a vampire. Don't worry, we're going to answer that question. Why did Jake say he kept, the collar kept him from becoming a vampire? There are some clues, pointing to the whole bobcat thing. If you look around in previous episodes, nothing obvious, nothing super obvious, but it's there if you look for it. And yeah, I hope y'all are enjoying that twist. I definitely, reading through the comments on episode 30, What? No, not 37. Was it episode 29? It was a little bit like there were people who were kind of confused, and then there were people who were like, "Oh, I love this. This is weird. This is totally not going where I expected." There's a pretty wide variety of opinions on it, which is fine. You know, I wouldn't have it any other way. Point being, I hope you're enjoying it. Even if it's weird and kind of confusing, I hope you're enjoying it. I am going to make sure that I get as many of the questions that you may have properly answered throughout the story arc. And anything that doesn't get answered in the story arc will probably be answered in a later story arc. That is the plan. Like everything that's going on in this episode may have several questions I may not immediately answer. And, maybe some questions will remain forever. Questions that I give to the audience to answer for themselves, if it comes to that. But for the most part, I like to try and make sure that there are as many questions answered as need be. So, anyway, beyond that, I'm just inking this demon fox, whatever it is. And so what's been going on for me? Well, just a lot of working, and that car that I spoke about last time is still in Breaux Bridge, Louisiana, still hanging out there. I saw One Piece Stampede. When was that? It was last week, so that would have been October. Oh, around October 26th, maybe? My memory's not too great on that. But anyway, saw that movie. I went to go see it with my friend Austin, and he was seeing it because he had to write a review for it for Otaku USA magazine. And the first time, so we saw it twice. Really, we saw it once, but we went to the theater twice. First day, we went, bought our tickets, and went to go sit down. We're waiting. And then as we were sitting there just chatting amongst ourselves, talking about, high school and memories as kids, that kind of stuff. Memories as kids growing up and whatever. A woman comes into the theater and she says, "We're really sorry about this. There's been some technical difficulties. The movie's not starting. We may need to give y'all actually, she said, we will give y'all a rain check regardless of what happens, and we're really sorry about it." And me and Austin are just like, "Oh, great." And then, I mean, the whole theater, is just, oh my God, really? Like, and the thing about this too was, so in the situation for One Piece, it was one of those Fathom event type things where, they don't have too many showings. There was going to be 2 showings, and I think that the showing that night for Stampede was a subbed showing, which means there were going to be subtitles. It was going to be in original Japanese. In the event that whoever's listening, for some reason you're not aware, and that's fine. I mean, why should you be aware of everything in the world? One Piece is a manga and anime from out of Japan. I don't know where else it would have been out of. Maybe South Korea. I'm not sure. Anyway, One Piece is a manga from the magazine Shonen Jump Monthly, and it's very popular in Japan. So popular that it has run for like 20 years. And that the movie we were seeing specifically that night was basically a movie in commemoration of One Piece having gone 20 years. And anyway, it's about pirates and weird, wacky superpowers and fantasy adventures, and it's a really wild kind of show and story. And I was really into it in high school or in college, and got out of it largely because I just didn't have the time to keep up with it. Like I really like One Piece, which is why I ended up seeing that movie. And generally, a lot of Japanese animated films have really high quality animation, which is why I really usually show up, is because I just want to see really pretty things. I want to see really cool action sequences, that kind of stuff. But anyway, point being, there was only going to be two showings of this movie. One was going to be subtitled, and the other one was going to be dubbed, dubbed in English. And there were a number of people there who were upset that they would have to watch the dubbed movie the next day when they had the other showing. And there are other people who are like, "Oh, I can't even make that showing." Okay, I just realized something. Bummer. Okay. I may have to start over and inking this panel. Oh, I'm not super excited about it. How do I want to do this? Like that. That's how I want to do it. I'm starting over because I'm not using the brush that I want to use. Alright, this is the dry brush split bristle. So let's start over. Okay, anyway. So in the movie theater, we are informed that there's technical difficulties. We're not going to be able to watch the movie. Yada yada. People were annoyed. And so, sadly, me and Austin had to leave that showing that night. Although we could have, if we wanted to, went to go see a different movie because they were offering like free concessions. Like, you could see any other movie that's playing in our theater tonight. We're still going to give you a rain check to see this again tomorrow if you're want to do that, which is a good it was a fair consolation given everything. But we looked. Me and Austin gave it a good look. We were like, well, let's see what else is playing tonight. None of it was grabbing our attention. It just, yeah. We thought for a second about seeing Gemini Man just to see like kind of a cheesy action movie, but there weren't any showings that we could catch. So we were kind of like, well, Gemini Man or bust. And Gemini Man wasn't happening, so we just left the theater, and we ended up spending that evening. We went to go. Where did we? We went to go get a drink somewhere just to hang out. I think we went to there's a local bar called Rick and Jack's, and we just had a couple of beers and talked about things. What did we talk about? Mostly we complained about the state of the state of media and movie culture and whatnot. But anyway, so next day we did go finally see One Piece Stampede, and my basic feelings about that movie were it's a very fun movie to look at, to watch. Wasn't a whole lot going on story wise. Not that I had any expectations that there would be. There's some really great action sequences, and additionally, something also more importantly, at least in regards to my own context in seeing that movie, is I haven't watched One Piece in like over a decade, and so I was way, way, way out of the loop. Um, Many characters have changed in certain ways, matured, grown up, gone through some serious stuff. Like a whole bunch of new characters have been added to the pirate crew of the Straw Hat Pirates. Some of them I knew about, some of them I didn't. And so that was fun in its own way, in that I was able to kind of. It was sort of like. The comparison I made the other night was like having left Narnia years ago and poking my head back in just to see what's changed. And I have to say, I really appreciate the main creative guy, Eiichiro Oda's like continued devotion to like making the world of One Piece this living thing. Like that's something that I find really cool about it, about One Piece. And if I ever, for whatever reason, have the time years from now to catch myself up with it and just either binge through episodes of the anime or read all the manga, I'm sure I will enjoy it, because there's a lot going on in that story. If you already read One Piece or like One Piece, I would recommend seeing it. I would suggest it. It was fun. If you're just like not into anime, I would say avoid it. If you're just like an animation person, you really like cool animation, might be worth a watch. Just for a lot of the scenes at the end. You would probably not get much out of it. Like I did, I didn't get a whole lot out of it, story wise, just because I don't know quite who everybody is in the story, but kudos to all the animators and production staff who put in the time to make One Piece Stampede. I'll just leave it at that. And then I have been reading Alan Moore's Jerusalem bit by bit. I bought it like 2 years ago. Largely as a Christmas present to myself, but yeah, I bought it 2 years ago and have been reading it chapter by chapter, and it's a really excellent book. I would say it's one of the more thought-provoking books I've read in a while. Also, I don't know, Alan Moore's doing some stuff that I've never read before in a book, but I don't read as much as I used to. But I'm a huge Alan Moore fan. For those of you who have read Alan Moore, it's probably super obvious reading Trailer Park Warlock. I love the way he thinks, and I love his creative spirit. For me, he's a personal, like, inspirational artist role model in certain ways. Anyway, I've been so I put the book I put let's see. I finished the first. It took me like a year and a half to read the first book. And then after I finished the first book, I didn't really touch the second book for a while. And then this summer, I think it was this summer, I started picking it up again and just like blasted through the second book. The second book is. The first book's it's good. The second book is amazing, I find. I really enjoyed the second book. And now the third book, which I'm reading now, although I put it down for, I don't know, like 3 months. I didn't touch it for 3 months, and then last week I picked it up and started reading it again. Yeah, there was just like at the beginning of the third book, there was this one chapter. The very first chapter was just kind of heavy for me, and I was like, oh, if the rest of the book is gonna be heavy like this, I don't know if I want to touch it for a while. So I just put it down and didn't really bother with it for a time because I'm still working through some difficult personal issues from very difficult last couple of years, and I was in a place where I'd rather be, I don't know, reading or watching or interacting with art that was more humorous, less heavy. I just was not something I was going to deal with at that time. But then this week I picked it back up. I was just like, you know what? Let's check it out. Let's see what's up. And did not regret it, because right after that first chapter of the third book, the second chapter is amazing. It's really good. And it's that. So the Book of Jerusalem, if I could best describe it, is Alan Moore has written a book that's basically like a partially fictional autobiography, but in terms of it being an autobiography, it's also mostly a biography of the town he has grown up in all of his life, Northampton in England. And having grown up in Northampton all his life and being a person who reads a lot and pokes his nose into all sorts of different things, he's learned a lot about his birthplace. And the book is in a lot of ways him talking about how he fits into it, how metaphorically, I would say, how he metaphorically fits into it, how Northampton fits into world history, into the world in general. But also on another level, Jerusalem is a story about poverty, because one of the most immediate things that Alan Moore makes very obvious, or very eloquently. How am I trying to put this? Okay, one of the things that Alan Moore makes most immediately discernible is that Northampton has and is a place of severe poverty, and has been a place of severe poverty for almost a millennium. And the story goes into that and goes into people's lives throughout, throughout a millennium of history, going back to, actually, probably more than a millennium of history now I think about it, but going into the lives of people during the medieval period, during um, periods of civil war in England, during several religious reformations, and also into more modern times. And even in one, I don't know if he's going to cover it in a later chapter, but in one instance, he even goes into the future and talks about, kind of speculates on the future of Northampton. But it all takes place in Northampton, and over time, as you read it, the town itself becomes this character that you begin to know in this very intimate way. I'm going to save real quick. And all the characters, you become familiar with how all the characters interact with each other over the history of this town. And not just even on the most basic level, even on a level of the spiritual realm in the story. So there's a large portion of the story that takes place in a near how should I put this? There's a major portion of the story that takes place in sort of the ghostly realms of Northampton, and it's all the inhabitants of Northampton that wish to remain in that place at that time, and their explorations of Northampton in that state. And those chapters are some of the most weird, interesting chapters. The way he conceptualizes ghostliness, being a spirit in a spirit realm in this book it's really fascinating, because he clearly tried to think of it from he tried to take the most scientific position possible in his description, which I thought was really interesting and weird. I say scientific, but maybe a better word would be mathematical. He just I don't know, it's something where I'm you have to read it. I can't even properly describe it. But it is one of the more fascinating things I've read in a book in a long time. And incredibly mind altering in terms of how you think about time, how you think about being a living conscious being, how you think about the physical space that you occupy. I've never read anything like it in my life. That aspect of it alone, I feel like the second book alone is worth reading Jerusalem for, in my mind, in my opinion. But that being said, it's a very big book. There's a lot going on in it. And so, trying to get back on track here. Give me a second. So Alan Moore has written this 1,000-page epic. And like I said, the most fascinating thing to me is that it's all about this one town that he's lived in all his life. And for me, that in itself is also creatively very intriguing, because then I start to kind of think about, my own birthplace and my own town that I've lived in for so many years. I've lived in a lot of different places, but I would say the majority of my life I've lived in Lake Charles, Louisiana, and while it is not the most exciting place in the world, I bet there is some history here that you could make a story out of, and that you could, find the fascination, find the bits and pieces that you could make an apotheosis of, so to speak, that you could create a good narrative around. So it's like that old saying of like write from what you know, and Alan Moore for the longest time has been writing all of this very like speculative type fiction, and then his second major prose work, I'm referencing Jerusalem. He writes directly from everything that he knows, or can possibly know, and it's like the most clear, uncut channel of Alan Moore. It is just like pure him, and that's my pitch for the book. If you ever want to read it, if you ever just have years to put aside to devote to reading this book, that's my pitch for it. So anyway, almost done. No, let's not do that. I'm almost done inking this panel here. I'm just trying to figure out. Still have to do the face. So it's looking good though. Alright. Let's ink this face and then we'll be all done. And as a final addendum, I would say it's not that often that I find art that inspires me to be a better artist. And that is one of those things I've come away with so far reading Jerusalem, is that feeling of there's more possible in art than I thought. Because I read something, I read a chapter where I'm like, I didn't even know you could do that with just writing. I didn't even know you could imagine something like that in that capacity, and that inspires me to try and find those areas that I could try and get into myself. So to finish off, I'd like to say that I hope whatever you're doing today, tomorrow, this week, the year, etc., that you're able to find art that inspires you to make better art, that inspires you to be a better person, maybe even, whatever. And I hope you're having a good day. I hope everything's going well in your neck of the woods, and I will be talking to you again soon. I hope you're doing all right, and have a good one. All right, bye.